Well, here we are again. I thought I'd share another of my crazy, New York anecdotes. There are a lot of stories in my life. I think it's very almost, material for an extraordinarily funny book, if nothing else, I think, because there was a kind of intensity and vitality of New York in the 1970s that I think it was very difficult to capture anywhere else. I mean, right now we're living in a much more sanitized and normalized sort of life almost everywhere in the United States. The general theme of control, streets with bike lanes and all kinds of dispensations, let's say, for normal life, that at that time, I think, it was just accepted that if you were going to get on a bike and go into the street, you were going to take your life into your own hands. But that also, as I say, led to a number of coincidences that are almost impossible to account for. Almost anyone, I think, who really had a life out in the street in the 1970s around New York would have been someone to tell a lot of these crazy stories. So I'll share two having to do with my early time as a musician that I think you'll find somewhat amusing, and I certainly can't forget them. In the first case, I think I remember being 19 years old, and I've mentioned before my friend Larry Lanoff, Lawrence. And Lawrence, unlike me, it's really funny because he came from a broken home essentially, but his mom was kind of cool. She was a cartoonist, and they lived at the West Beth Artist Housing, which is downtown Manhattan, and it's still there. And I had this kind of a middle class existence as an immigrant, really, because my father was an architect and my mother was a gymnast essentially, and there was we were trying really hard to become reestablished. And so I think that it was, I had the aspirations of musicianship and art that I have followed, but at the same time I didn't have the same stability inside the medium that he did, because I had trouble with English, for example. And at the same time, he didn't have the stability of family that you would expect someone would have, So in any case, he and I were really great friends, and we hung out a lot. And so one of the days that I do remember being in my funk, down, just very, very, upset and not really happy about the outcome of things. Larry was like, "Hey man, what's the problem?" And I said, it's just, how do I make it as a musician in New York? It's just so difficult, especially doing the work I'm doing, which is jazz. It was just so hard. Nobody wants to hear this, I mean, in terms of any music, even punk rock had a better chance than early jazz musicians did in New York. If you were a starting out jazz musician, there were very few places you were going to be able to play, whereas punk rock places like even CBGB could, had a kind of, again, that vitality that permitted many people to sort of have a place to play and an audience to enjoy. And so for younger jazz musicians, particularly like me, who had their own group and wrote their own music, I think it'd be very difficult, So I do remember kind of just, holding my head. I think, how am I going to, what am I going to do? It's just very difficult. And he said, well, what do you want to do? What exactly do you want to do? And I said, well, at the very least, I'd like to study with somebody who I really respect. Someone like, I don't know, like John Scofield would be a great musician, which he was. He's always been extraordinary. And Larry said, well, I don't know if you know this, but John Scofield lives right here in West Beth. And I said, that's it. That's just, I thought he was pulling my leg. I was like, nah, there's no way that could be the case. And he goes, yeah, let's go check out the basement. I think he hangs out there. And so we went to the basement of West Beth. If you've ever been there, or if you know about this, it's an extraordinary building, which was one of the secret sites for the development of the Manhattan Project. It's a very fortified building, and it has a history, a couple of secrets, and many legends. Gil Evans as well lived there, the great jazz arranger and composer. So in any case, we're walking around, and these are effectively catacombs in the middle of downtown Manhattan. It's this extraordinary building, and we go and approach the elevator to come back up again. And no sooner do we reach the first floor to step out than who's there but John Scofield. And how many times in your life can you say that something like that has happened? That's never happened. This never happened to me. So I was like, I couldn't understand that it was really him, although he had a soft guitar gig bag and obviously his head over his shoulder. And Larry says, "Oh, hi, John, what's happening?" And I was like in a space of complete Twilight Zone surrealism. And he said, this is my friend and he wants to study with you. And John, without skipping a beat, gets into the elevator and he shakes my hand and he goes, $25 an hour. Can you, how about next Wednesday? And I was like, yeah. And that actually happened, and it was an amazing situation. He was a great teacher. Just what a guy, and what an extraordinary, not only player, but just a very generous person, And he gave me a huge amount. So in any case, I do think that was one of the two sort of crazy, amazing stories. I think about this, the sort of the coincidences of life, There's another story. Well, actually, there's so many. It's hard to put it together, where you kind of wonder, what the heck. But in this one, there was less a coincidence than it was just, again, part of what was going on for people to survive at that time. At this point now we're around the 1980s, okay, so we were trying to figure out where in my group we could actually record a cassette, as it was at the time, of course, that we could then gig around and, and we needed a new recording. So we looked around for different studios. We had actually been in several where I had traded, I don't know what I traded, to tell you the truth, because we used to be able to then get free time in the evening, like, way at night, to record in some of these studios, which had been old converted warehouses and stuff. But for some reason, either they were no longer there, they weren't available. In any case, our drummer Darren he found this one place called the One Right Angle. One Right Angle was the name of the studio. And we talked to the guy. His name was Emil Zogby. I'm sure, Emil, if you're out there, you're probably somewhere. I don't know what the hell you're doing these days. So this is on Broadway, a funny place on Broadway to have a recording studio, like around 70-something street or something, or 79, 80, around there. Not a place where you would have any kind of recording studios. Generally, as you know, that's a place for first floor eating establishments, small apparel shops, etc. You wouldn't have like a recording studio there. So I was kind of weirded out by the whole, address. And so we ended up going, and it turns out that it was his apartment. And I was like, okay, well, you got an apartment that you've turned into a studio. We start walking up these stairs, no elevator, and these really tight stairs, about as narrow, even narrower each way than the width of a car as you're going in. And he was up on the 6th floor. And I was like, how do you get equipment up here? So he was very enthusiastic. He just I've just finished it. I've just finished my new studio. I'm going into, into marketing about it, whatever. So you guys are some of the first. And, I can't wait for you to come see it. And I was like, this is a walk, and how are we going to get, we had an upright bass we wanted to bring, and I was like, how's this going to work? Drums, keyboard, and he was so enthusiastic, he didn't want to hear about any of it, and he kind of assuaged, or at least eclipsed our concerns, and he would go up there, and why do you call it One Right Angle? And it turns out that it was a room in his apartment that he had just taken over, and he had actually placed the walls in such a way that only one of the walls, whether it's at a 90 degree at a right angle to any of the other walls. The idea was that then sound reverberation would be more effectively controlled if the if the walls weren't exactly at 90 degrees from each other. And so there was a whole, everything you would kind of want to expect in the beginnings of a studio. Certainly there was a wall where there was a piano on the other side and a glass kind of window where then the pianist who wasn't in the room would be able to play. and look through the small window. It wasn't a large window, but as it happens, that was his bedroom. So if you got tired, you could just like lay over into the bed. And that was like, he had an upright piano, and there are a lot of lights and a lot of things. And I just remember asking him, how did you ever like install all this equipment, get it all in here? He said, actually, the real question is the electrical aspect of it, because in order to do so, I had to install some 220 volt lines that no longer. Obviously, you can't do that in a residential location. So I had to cut up the floor, and I had to cut up the people downstairs' floor in order to get access to the main line. And I was like, everybody's renting, nobody owns, right? So he said I had to go down there, and then there was like this Vietnamese family, and I had to explain to them that I was from the power company. How they didn't recognize that he was a neighbor, I have no idea. But in any case, he goes, I had to get this like circular saw, and I'm cutting into their floor twice so that I could lift up planks and get access to this big electrical trunk of some sort, or lay it down. I can't remember, but he said, like, few things are more surreal than actually having an entire Vietnamese family standing there and looking at you while you're tearing up their floor, and you're just pretending that it's, a utility procedure and completely routine. So he did that, and he did it for his own floor as well, and he tore it up. Whatever happened, I don't know. We did record there once, and it was a beautiful thing. And Darren, the drummer, kept those recordings, so I wish I could share them with you. Maybe one day. Darren Lyons, give me my recordings, man. But anyway, so much for that. All right. That's about it for now. 2 anecdotes from that time. I'll talk to you later. Thanks. Bye.